Welcome to episode 68. A Woman's Work is Never Done with Dr. Regina Lark. In 2008, before founding her seven-figure company, Dr. Regina Lark excelled in a career in higher education. But when budget cuts eliminated her position at UCLA, Regina started over at age 50 and created a clear path from scratch. Today, Lark and her ninja organizers provide professional, physical, emotional, and psychological support to people who wish to clear clutter and chaos from their lives. Dr. Lark holds a PhD in women's history from the University of Southern California. Her work in that field informs her third and most recent book, Emotional Labor: Why a Woman's Work is Never Done and What to Do About It. Lark helps women Lark helps women rid their lives of emotional labor by offering concrete ways to identify and mitigate the costs of women's unseen, unnoticed, and unwaged work at home in order to unleash women into the full potential in the paid workplace. She is a TEDx speaker and delivers keynotes and workshops on women's leadership, emotional labor, time management, productivity, hoarding, and ADHD. Dr. Lark is also the author of Psychic Debris: Crowded Closets, the relationship between the stuff in your head and what's under your bed. Welcome to the podcast, Regina.
Amelia, I just love speaking with you, and I'm so glad.
It's amazing. So you and we met through the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals and quickly discovered that we both share a passion for feminism, the mental load, all things executive functioning, and emotional labor. So
In a
tell us a little bit
nutshell.
about yourself. So I'd love to just kind of start our conversation. You and I had the pleasure of having dinner a few weeks ago, and you mentioned to me that when you were young, you moved from New York to California. So what did organization look like for you during your childhood years?
It's a good question because started down the path of being an organizer. I didn't have the language for what I did. I wasn't really aware of the world around me when I was a child. And I do recall moving when we moved into young, so I was probably 14. I think back, and I don't know if this was purposeful or not, but my bedroom, in order to get to my bedroom, you had to walk through this funky laundry room. I could not go to my bedroom. I could not walk through a funky laundry room unless it was unfunky. So I thought, did my mother do this purposefully? Put me in the bedroom next to the laundry room so that everything would be folded and I would do it on my way to bed. I would just do stuff. So I knew that I had I call it a gift now, and I know that I got healthy executive functioning skills. And in fact, when I look at my family of women, I could point to the fact that of the six of us, 3 sisters and my parents, of the 6 of us, 4 are wired just like me. 4 of us are wired similarly, and 2 of us need us. So my mom and my youngest sister, as it turns out, have function. And it's taken them many years to really recognize that and learn how to manage that. I mean, I've been decluttering and organizing them since I became a business owner, of course, but they have come into their own. My sister in her 50s and my mom in her.
Appreciate you sharing that, because it's really where I kind of wanted to start our conversation, which is first with organization, and then we'll shift into talking about the mental load and emotional labor. But I know that you have spent these last couple of decades really noticing how other people operate within their homes. So, right, you're saying that
Yeah.
some folks in a family can be wired one way and other folks another way.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious about like why awareness of how we think and how we operate and how we see kind of our spaces and our sense of organization, how that affects how we operate on our day-to-day basis in the household.
I know we've all heard knowledge is power. I think that phrase always ought to be followed with, but what you do with the knowledge will empower you. So knowledge is power, but what you do with the knowledge will empower you. This question, my first thought was, the more knowledge we have about our wiring, the it lessens the opportunity to dive into comparison analysis. What so many people do, and you and I see this all the time, people have Pinterest pages, favorite Instagram posts that show loveliness and order and calm and no chaos. They've pinned these pics on their dream board, and they compare other people's outsides to their insides. And they don't really know what it took for that image to become this the user's idea of perfect. We don't know what it actually took to get to that. We also don't know if that's a true ideal for our talent, skills, and ability. Question what we see. What we do is compare ourselves to that. I can't achieve that. There must be something wrong with me. So knowing this, having this understanding about why we think and act in particular ways, why it's been part of our life for as long as we can remember. You use the word curious a lot, Amelia, and it's such an underused word because I encourage people, become curious about why you put that item there. I have a saying in our company: once the team has cleared the path, over the next 30, 60, or 90 days, watch yourself. See how you're acting in that new space. Become curious about, so if your organizer said, and you agreed, the mail's going to go here. Every day the mail comes out of the box and we're going to put it here because on Fridays we're going to deal with the mail. Whatever you decide. One day, back up. You may put the mail there for 6 weeks, but one day you may miss it. One day it may land on the countertop. And rather than you saying, oh, you never follow direction. What's wrong with you? The organizer said to put it here. You said this is a good place, but now look what you've done. It's like, no, just be curious. What brought it to the countertop and not to the office? You're at yourself.
That you say that because it is really gets to what I think and why I exist as a business owner, as a clutter coach, these layers deeper, because what you're pointing out is how quick we are to jump to judgment.
Right.
how quickly we are to jump to comparison. And those things might not even work for us. This myth of domestic perfection, right? That it should be this Pinterest pretty or Instagram worthy. But as you're talking, right, there's no acknowledgement of the time and energy and attention it took to get to that
Right.
place,
Right.
as well as the time, energy, and attention it takes to maintain that space.
Yes.
And then women in particular, because that's our area of focus, we beat ourselves up, we judge, we compare, and say, I failed because I didn't maintain and keep the system the exact way, rather than what I love is the curiosity, the
Yeah.
understanding, and the questioning of even if that made sense in the first place for
Right.
your home, right?
Well, it's two things come to mind as you're sharing this. One, we're always, and I think when we put the mail on the countertop, what prevents us from saying, "You silly goose"? You know, how did your magnificent self forget to do it? Put it in the office. I want us to embrace the language of uplift and elevate, because we tend to
Mm.
denigrate ourselves in so many obvious and subtle ways. And it's the word that we use on ourselves that we would never say to our dearest friend. How is it that we're not our own dearest friend? So, like you said, the layers are so multiple and deep. And it's that peeling away, one layer after the next. It's a silly, never walk into a room full of women and say, "Hey, you guys." And it's because I'm listening to every word coming out of my mouth. So we can start listening to the words that we use to describe ourselves.
It's
Idiot.
intentional thinking, right? It's shifting that dialogue inside, which takes effort, but reaps so many rewards in
Sure.
terms of learning self compassion. And you and I both know, because we've studied, we've lived, we've gotten curious,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of this has roots and ties into the cultural expectations, the socialization, the way that women are really raised generation after generation to believe that all things life and home and family related are their domain. And if other folks aren't happy, and if the folks aren't satisfied at home and things aren't running optimally or smoothly, that we're at fault, right?
Yeah.
That is our responsibility, our burden to create that space of domestic bliss and the space of everybody being able to find what they need. And that's a heavy weight.
Yeah. And the weight falls on their shoulders like a giant set of shoulder pads. And shoulder pads are light. They're fluffy. But 40 years of shoulder pads 10 years of shoulder pads. It's got to weigh you down. It can't help but weigh you down. So we wear it going, but then the next layer happens and the next layer happens. And I mentioned on one of the morning shows on a new study on burnout. And the converse, loneliness, depression, invisibility, anxiety. Couples, one person in a relationship is feeling very lonely and isolated because of the burnout. And so we're not talking about isolated incidences. And as you said, multiple generations. Say the term men's work, and we think contractor, we think all kinds of things, IT, president. We say women's work, we don't think Supreme Court justice.
And so let's build that bridge to why the work is leading to burnout, right? We can talk about, people can recognize the signs and symptoms of exhaustion and burnout. Most of the answers that are put forth are get more organized, be more productive, but those don't always address those layers underneath that you and I are talking about, which is this assumption, this cycle of home management, home maintenance, that many people don't even recognize is work. It is unpaid, but it is work. So talk to me about burnout, women's work, and why we need to value all this unpaid labor.
My apologies.
They don't know there's a podcast recording going on.
No, they don't know. It's a very important call. Okay.
Women's work and burnout.
Well, the volume of work is it's an unwritten job description, unless hiring people to do the jobs. So there is a job description for household management. There are manuals that have been designed and developed for household management. I had a light bulb moment a couple of weeks ago. It might have been when you and I were having dinner. When we hire people to do a job, we hire them based on their talent, skills, abilities. We base it on their resume. We base it on what they told us about what they can do. When we put a person in the task of homemaking or household management, if it is this person is a wife, and there's this cultural assumption the female does this body of work, no one talks about the work. No one mentions what the work is. No one is letting her know that this is the longest job description in history. Is this your skill set? Is this something you can do? We never ask that question. What we do is assume that the work can be done. We haven't defined the work. And if she is not known to herself in terms of her executive functioning, and a couple of other parts of this, when we have someone to clean our house, we know the value of having someone to clean the house, but we're probably not going to pay more than, say, $20 to $30 an hour. More or less. I mean, $50. But we have a price in our head that that's what we think this work is worth. So we have this understanding that the work of the household is probably easy. That's why we don't pay housekeepers that much. And we think, well, there's laundry and there's dishes and there's shopping and there's schoolwork and there, there's a whole host of things. But really, how hard can any of those really be? What we don't, multiple layers that go into each task. There's no such thing as laundry. There's sort, wash, dry, fold, put away, and they have to be done in that order. And each one of those is this work.
We underestimate the amount of time, the amount of thinking,
Yes.
the amount of standards and expectations, right? Two people living in the same household can say, oh, wet laundry can sit in the machine X number of minutes before it goes into the dryer, but someone else may have a different standard.
Sure.
And that in and of itself can lead to tension and disruption and, well, arguments over, well, why didn't the wet clothes go into the dryer? And all of the thinking and planning, as well as noticing, I want to get to that topic in a minute, that is necessary to make these systems run.
Right.
So there's value in the work, and it's not as simple and straightforward as we make it out to be.
There's value in the work, and there's value in knowing what it takes. And
right, it's, so the term that is being created around this is cognitive labor, mental load, right? It is the invisible, unseen work of noticing, anticipating, gauging other people's feelings and what they need. And all of that you outline in your amazing book, Emotional Labor, Why a Woman's Work is Never Done and What to Do About It. And it's happening unseen, which is why there's so much confusion and discontent between partners, as well as exhaustion on the part of women, folks out there who are doing this thinking, noticing, and planning.
Right.
So what are some of the things that we can do about this never-ending job description that we have to run a household?
Well, some of it will require that we stop comparing ourselves to other people. No one else is walking in our shoes, and nurtured or not, in every way possible. The other part is to acknowledge the body of the. I think women have been sold a bill of goods. We've been taught that the work of the household is a labor of love. And the focus has always been on the love, never on labor. One of the things I so enjoy and appreciate, and her playing cards, you can hold up my book, I'll hold up her playing cards, is that the deck of fair play cards, the deck is filled with seen, the visible and the invisible. And it's one way to get the other adult or the growing children in on what the heck we're talking about. So making the work visible by laying out the cards, laying your cards on the table, That makes the invisible work visible because it includes self-care. It includes picking, calendaring stuff with the kids. I mean, you have to think about, so it includes the visible and the invisible. And then the other part of this, so it's letting go of comparisons. It's getting an understanding of what does the work entail without filters. It's just, this is what the work, someone's got to wipe the top of the fan blades. Someone's going to clean at the top of the, I mean, this is just work. It's just a lot of work. So making the work visible. And then I think for a lot of women, and I want to talk more about this on some level, but I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about, is there only one way to load a dishwasher? And that, yes, there is only, we kept drilling down. And this is what it said. One day she was teaching her 5-year-old to unload the dishwasher and dishes, maybe 7-year-old. And that happened and it was great. But then, and was setting the table for dinner on the plate. And my friend remembers the mom giving her the stink eye. Like, what is this? And she took back the dishwasher. And so for her, it wasn't something she didn't want to be criticized about. Narrative.
Which is true for so many women, right? We're spending our cognitive energy, our thinking, our brain capacity in our paid work. And then we're coming home and doing hours of unpaid work that might be past our limit of cognitive capacity for the day. And then again, as we were talking about, beating ourselves up for not doing it. But I think when you talk about avoiding, for example, the criticism from another person, that's where we get into the layers of unlearning our habits and expectations that might be that we're putting unfairly on ourselves, teaching others to step up and contribute, and allowing them to make mistakes, and allowing there to be a speck of food on a dish, which is no one's fault. And then the relearning of a lighter, more easier way to navigate home life, which is what we want. But I love that you're pointing out that there's more than simply the final result of that Pinterest pretty image of a perfect kitchen and home.
Well, and
feels so much better.
And even if I'm leaving the grocery store and I'll bag my own groceries, they go perfect. I hear the word perfect almost chronically. And it's like, what the hell does that really mean? Is that the ultimate goal? Perfect? I'm an advocate of good enough some of the time.
Yes, it feels so much better, and it gives us the time and space for what we're truly after, which is connection with our family and friends, time to be someone else with our own interests and pleasure and joy, outside of being a parent, being a professional, being a partner, just being me, Amelia, being Regina, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives space for that.
Really
Oh my
get
goodness.
done on her shoulder better. That's hardly fair, hardly equitable. So there's another through line here for even those and they're tasked with that body of work.
Yes, and the thing that you address and say so explicitly in your TEDx talk is the same could be true for men. That gender does not predispose you to be able to do this work. He can go to work, uses executive functioning capabilities in that space. All of those same skills apply to housework and home management if they're discussed and outlined and explicitly identified and just handed over to them. So it's not gender,
Right.
right?
It
It's
is so
these.
not gender. We continue. When you say women's work, we are actually looking at the work through the lens of the womb. She's one, and it's such an interesting. I do know and wholly acknowledge and accept that there are women that feel that they were born to the work of the household, that this is a passion and a love the other way. And I acknowledge and respect that. So I'm not talking about those women. I'm talking about
And I
the women.
appreciate that you
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate that you say that because I was at home for over a dozen years. And I think what you're speaking to is the power of choice.
All we have to do is look at the reproductive rights landscape today. Choice has become subdued, has become of sexism, patriarchy.
And unfortunately, we won't solve it today. Oh my goodness, Regina, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and bring some of these deeper topics to my listeners and out into the light. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And before we go, I want to close the conversation by asking you, what's one creative way that you use organization now in your life as an adult, as a business owner, as a speaker, an educator?
Delegating to get done. Who cares who's good at it? Just get her done. That's we gotta embrace radical delegation.
That is so amazing and such a powerful takeaway to really just consider ways in which ways in which we can all radically delegate what needs to be done simply to get it done to those around us. We got to share this work. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Regina.
Of course, always.
I want you to tell the folks how they can get access to your tremendous TEDx talk, your book, Emotional Labor, Why a Woman's Work is Never Done, and what to do about it. And of course, how to connect with you. And we'll link it all in the show notes as well. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you.
Okay.